From the Russ Center for Media in downtown Cape Girardeau, welcome to Focus on Southeast, a program on issues, events, and people impacting the campus of Southeast Missouri State University. I'm Dan Woods with KRCU Public Radio. Workforce development is defined as initiatives that educate and train individuals to meet the needs of current and future business and industry in order to maintain a sustainable, competitive economic environment. So, what does workforce development look like in Southeast Missouri? To find out, I'm joined by Dan Presson, Director of Career Services and Interim Vice President for Economic and Workforce Development, and Rob Gilligan. He's President and CEO of the Cape Chamber. Gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Dan, thanks for having us.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so let's jump right in here. Why is talking about workforce development so important, Dan?
You know, workforce development is the future of how our businesses continue to function in this region of Missouri. We've got to develop a trained and able and ready workforce in order for these companies to continue to fulfill their orders, in order for these businesses to continue to compete on a national level. And so workforce development is an important conversation because it takes place on so many different levels but it's really an essential element of the economy.
So Rob, speak to that. I mean, it's an important thing to discuss, and on paper it may look good, but implementing it is not always easy.
Sure, yeah. Implementing strategies and identifying what those steps are a critical piece of community dialogue and conversation, partnership with organizations such as Southeast Missouri State, educational institutions, business organizations, even statewide programs with state or federal programs to do that. But articulating and creating pathways to develop workforce that ties into work opportunities within the region is really one of the most critical pieces. It's easy to develop training and skills, but making sure that we can match those up with opportunities in the marketplace is where the real work gets done locally.
And there's not really one person that's sitting at 30,000 feet watching all this. So on the ground, Dan, how does this all really work, the mechanics of it?
You know, so on the ground, you've got organizations like all of the regional chambers of commerce, and especially here in Cape Girardeau. You also have institutions like Southeast Missouri State University, Three Rivers Community College, Mineral Area College, the CTCs, and even the school districts. Mm-hmm. All of them are listening to the needs of employers, and they're adapting curriculum, they're adapting training, and they're adapting all of the different things that they offer to their students in order to meet the needs of those types of employment opportunities. Now, if we went out there and started a program in an employment opportunity that we don't even have, in this region, we would be exporting talent. Workforce development is really about training, keeping, and making sure that the people that want to be in this region have excellent access to training, but then have also excellent access to employment opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Is it challenging or difficult to get everybody on the same page? I wouldn't think there would be a business that would say, well, we don't really want to head in that direction, but maybe based on what the market is doing, maybe they need to. I don't know.
Yeah, it's really a mix, and especially for businesses and organizations, it's probably one of the biggest struggles is identifying what the right opportunities are for the mix of workforce and the mix of partners that they need to work with. SEMO is a great partner for developing professionals, organizational leaders, mid and upper level management opportunities. But when you think about some of our largest employers in Southeast Missouri, the CTC becomes a much more critical partner. New programs through Mineral Area College or Rankin, other programs like that become critical because they develop that entry level, production level workforce. And so coordinating the effort from so many partners is where a lot of the work sometimes becomes most difficult and becomes cumbersome for both private businesses and even organizations, nonprofit and public.
Absolutely. It's a sum of all the parts because you've got organizations like school districts and CTCs that are training on one level. You've got community colleges that are training on another level, and universities that are training on multiple levels, all the way up to master's level candidates. And so it's all of it working in symphony together, having regional leaders that understand what's going on so that people can point employers to the right direction where they need to go for some of their employment needs.
What about competition between the educational institutions? I mean, they all want to have students come to their campus to do their programs. So there's a little bit of that in this mix too, right? Or does everybody sort of, we'll take this area, you take this area, and so it spreads it out? Is that structured that way?
There's always going to be competition. Anytime you've got a preponderance of people offering options, there's going to be competition at some level. However, an institution like Southeast Missouri State University doesn't offer an HVAC certification, and so there are lots of areas in which there are not organizations stepping on each other's toes.
Yeah. So if someone was wanting to plug in and figure out and get a skill, I mean, is there a place to go to find out, whether you go to this institution or this institution or this? I mean, how does someone sort of navigate this? There's a lot of things going on, a lot of messaging coming out.
There's really great resources, especially on the statewide of this from the state of Missouri, such as the Missouri Job Centers. Missouri Job Centers are excellent opportunities for people that are in need of employment opportunities to come together, understand what kind of opportunities are available for maybe some state aid for retraining. Additionally, they can find opportunities to join in on any level of workforce training that they might be interested in.
Is the Fast Track Workforce Initiative, is that a part of that? It's a part of the state offering, right?
Absolutely.
So Rob, what are you hearing from employers in Southeast Missouri about what they're looking forward to in the next few years, workforce-wise?
So certainly concerns the workforce population, and really if you kind of take a step back and you look at some of the demographic trends that business leaders, that community leaders, even to be honest with you, university leaders are looking at, they're worrisome, right? We have our largest population ever that's moving into retirement age. That generation we refer to as the boomer generation, right. And so we're seeing more people hit that retirement age of 65 every day than ever before, while at the same time the number of individuals turning 18 years old in the country is at one of its lowest levels. Recent information I saw showed that there'll be 300,000 less 18-year-olds in the United States in the coming year versus previous years where that average. So we see less people moving into the workforce and a greater number of people moving out of the workforce. And so you'll see conversations around extending that opportunity, trying to encourage people maybe to stay in the workforce longer or developing up. And so there's concerns both of new talent there, but we're also starting to see gaps in the middle and development of leadership within organizations as we see a huge generation retire and opportunities for people to move up, but we didn't necessarily have a strong population of people to move into those opportunities. And so it's not just developing new talent, but even working with universities or leadership development programs to develop skills for individuals to move from entry-level and mid-level careers to upper-level careers within organizations will be critical for the next 5 years.
Okay, and that's something that I guess the university is looking at, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Leadership level trainings. Obviously, any type of graduate degree program is always preparatory for these types of things. But you'll see different certifications, especially within like a Master's of Business Administration, that really hit to the heart of what we're talking about. There's in the process of working on different certifications through that MBA that would allow somebody to have that opportunity to do that higher level training and skill set. And this is a conversation I've heard on every level, from just base level independent trainings for supervisors and leaders, then even into law enforcement trainings for supervisors. There's a whole need for that supervision level employee to be trained up into from an entry level position.
So there's a real gap in this supervisory leadership sort of area. I had no idea. What is,
Well, so if you think about it, so COVID actually removed a huge number of people out of the workforce that weren't intending to retire at a certain point. So we had a million additional retirees than we were expecting in the year 2021. Well, so those retirees, plus you add an incredible amount of wealth that was generated in the real estate market because everybody's housing prices ballooned and everybody went up. We lost a large chunk of what we would even consider still solid working aged people out of the workforce. And so it just created a vacuum where we need to pull up those leaders into the next generation. COVID was a pretty major rift in the employment market. And so we're still kind of finding our way back from some of those pretty intense times.
And that's one of those things that takes time to recover from.
Yeah.
I know the university has the pilot program. There probably already is a pilot shortage, or is going to be. That's just one example, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, so those programs are there, and one of the other things that really is another factor is the innovation of new opportunities in workforce. And so a lot of times in education and even in development of training, we talk about the fact that a lot of the jobs that our youth, so if you're working at the K-12 level, specifically middle school and high school for development, a lot of the jobs that they're going to have career-wise in the next 20 years aren't even fully fleshed out and developed yet. And so those innovations and opportunities of workforce that continue to strive and create, I mean, if you think about, all of us that now carry our phones 10 years ago, think about the number of careers that are developed just because of application development for phones that none of us had, 15 years ago. And that new career opportunity, those new pathways, that population shift still impacts that, and what does it get replaced with? What are our strategies going on throughout there? And that's a real struggle for education planning, and certainly a real struggle for business planning as well. That's
one of the things I asked Dr. Vargas when he was here was, you think you want to have this degree program, you think the market's moving this way, and you develop it and plan it all out, then you launch it, and then it doesn't work out like you think. All the research sort of points in a different direction, and his response was, you just got to tweak it, adapt it, and go.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's the great thing about a curriculum like that, is that most curriculums are able to be adapted and changed fairly quickly on all levels. High school curriculums, CTC curriculums, community college curriculums, higher education, university curriculums. There's always that need for change in the market, and there's always people looking to make those little adaptations. Whenever it comes to non-credit training opportunities, that's another great option for people that are looking to sort of find that little skill set. Or increase that little bit of knowledge that they have in SQL, Microsoft Excel, other types of really key skill sets that people need to help them move forward in their career. Now, that might not be a full degree, that might not be a full program. That's just a short-term training opportunity that can help somebody move a little bit further.
So when you talk about all of these folks that retired unexpectedly, how much of a knowledge gap did that all of a sudden leave in many of these businesses and industries around the area?
It left a large chunk of that institutional knowledge would leave. And now we're looking for that next generation of leaders to step up and be leaders in rural parts of the United States.
Yeah, communities that are impacted, I think that's a good example. Also, when we spend some time looking at generational differences, for our generation, it's not uncommon for us to change career paths, workforce opportunities, and locations. And so as we move into leadership, we may only have, 3, 5, 7, maybe even 10 years within an organization. We're losing a generation of individuals that have worked in the same opportunities for periods of time that are significant. So we're not just losing their leadership and their talent, but we're also losing years of knowledge, of pathway, and that's something that a lot of businesses are starting to face and kind of think about, how do we make sure that we transfer that historical knowledge, operational knowledge long term, and what those innovation opportunities can be.
And I guess probably from now on, are we going to see people stay at jobs 20, 30, 40, 45 years and retire? Is that kind of gone now? Or
you will always have a core group of employees that really like to put down roots, and they enjoy that, knowing their daily situation. They enjoy knowing when they go in. They enjoy knowing where they are. Yeah. There will always be a core group of people that are going to be solid as a rock. 10, 20, generational employees. However, it is becoming way more accepted for people to jump, for people to hop around, for people to stay 1, 2, 3 years at different places. You look at the rise of the gig economy, and the gig economy has changed the longevity of how the attention span that people have in a work environment, to now everybody is looking for that next best option pretty much all the time.
And as you're an employer, how do you prepare for that? What do you do?
Yeah, so this is where employers, I think, in the conversation we're having, are becoming very acutely aware that they have to be a little bit more aggressive on retaining and working with their staff to keep them happy. And as the market tightens, as the workforce market tightens, when you look at unemployment rates in our region, less than 2%, when historically we would consider 3% roughly full employment within a region. And we're, even a whole nother 33% beyond that in our unemployment rates. The competition for workforce is so difficult that even individuals that you think would be committed long term are being forced with opportunities that are hard to say no to step out and to leave organizations, leave job opportunities that they really enjoy, but for personal decisions, for their family, for themselves, for opportunities, they're moving there. So employers are going to be really challenged with making sure they stay engaged with their staff, staying engaged with the market, and understanding what opportunities are and trying to keep up. It's going to be really difficult for the next 5 to 10 years as our workforce continues to be short, just total bodies available.
And that employee happiness, it's not just about money in many cases, right? What else would be a factor? What are some of the things?
So a lot of times we will hear that it is flexibility. It's become more, and specifically I would argue that the pandemic really heightened that as a priority. The ability to be available, the commitment of time, separation of time opportunities, and so the tradition of an employee being available nights and weekends whenever it's needed, covering in, versus what's expected now, the conversations we have there. It may be different amenities, but more importantly is, I would argue, businesses that find that each of their employees is an individual and may have different priorities that drive what's important to them, and building ways that they can work with and support their individual employees will be critical. So if you have a system-wide blanket that everybody gets treated equally, it becomes harder and harder to maintain that consistent workforce.
So more of an individualized.
Yeah, it's going to be constant recruiting. That's really what it boils down to. Is you're always going to either be recruiting to fill gaps in your current employment needs, or you'll be recruiting to retain your existing employees. It's going to be marketing to your internal as the same way that you're marketing to the external. And so there's always going to be that need for employers to realize that it's that two-way conversation. You want to talk and recruit people in the same way you're still trying to talk and keep people there.
So the days of the boss just sort of hiding in the office and not really interacting with folks unless he really did an evaluation, it needs to be more communication than that, the way things have moved.
It's going to be very critical for them to be much more engaged in the future.
Well, let's take a pause here because we want to talk some more. So we'll take a break and we'll continue our conversation in just a moment. This is Focus on Southeast. We'll be right back.
Life is complicated enough. Why worry about what to do with your extra car? Skip the costs of maintaining it, storing it, insuring it, or renewing registration. Car repairs? Forget about it. Here's one easy solution to your car problem. Donate it to a nonprofit. It's fast, free, tax deductible, and if you donate, you're going to feel incredible knowing you're supporting a great cause. Interested? Just call this toll-free number or donate online. Thank you.
Prescription drug pricing points to corporate
Freedom of the press is about your right to know.
and Clark sheer athleticism.
It's about your right to be informed.
Waves for the stock market.
Today, there are real threats to press freedom
is reaching residential areas.
and your right to know about the world around us. We must protect our right to know, no matter what kind of news is important to you.
Great question.
Before it's too late, understand the threats. ProtectPressFreedom.org.
Welcome back to Focus on Southeast. We are talking workforce development on today's show with Dan Presson and Rob Gilligan, and let's continue our conversation. It's been interesting so far. So I'm going to go back to you, Dan, and ask, what are employees, I should say, looking for? Could you work with the graduates here at they're graduating? What are they looking for from their future employer?
You know, every student's different. There are some students that are motivated by money. There are some students that are motivated by PTO or unlimited PTO. Some students are motivated by flexible scheduling and being able to work from home. So it really is all across the board. You know, we were talking about customizing things for individual employees for retention purposes. Really, there is that review of customizing based on what individual entry-level candidates are looking for. Because here's the thing, is if they can't find the flexibility with you that they're looking for, there's another option out there. If they can't find the salary with you that they're looking for, there's another option out there. And now with the opportunities presented by remote work opportunities, they don't have to be, if they're in Cape Girardeau, they might be working for a company out of Cincinnati because they found the right mix of PTO, salary, and flexibility.
When you throw the remote work into it, it really makes it challenging, doesn't it, to put the package together, I guess.
It really does, and and obviously that's one that is always interesting to watch. To watch trends. Obviously, we know a lot of the businesses that were early on proactive in moving to remote work. The pandemic certainly pushed a lot of activity, but now we're starting to see a little bit of a pullback and that request, that desire for people to return back to the office space. And so how that shakes out will be interesting. For rural communities, I think it's a potential positive because if there's an opportunity for really high skill career opportunities that may not exist in Southeast Missouri traditionally, but somebody wants to be in Southeast Missouri, or maybe their family needs to be in Southeast Missouri for another career opportunity or other ties, but they can keep those career opportunities, there can be some real advantages to rural America. But then we really kind of get into making sure that we have the backbone systems there to support that, so that we can be competitive in those pieces and be ready for it. One of the other things that I'd be interested to hear, probably from Dan a little bit, but is understanding when we try and keep, and we spend a lot of time talking about how do we keep the workforce here local, right? When you have the advantage of a university in your community that is recruiting in a large population of future workforce, early workforce opportunity, training them, developing them, but then many of them graduate and leave, may go back home to where they're from, go into larger markets. How do we keep them here locally? We sometimes need to be aware of the strategies that employers are using elsewhere to come and recruit students out of SEMO, and what should we be doing locally and regionally to make sure we keep them here instead of just assuming they should stay because they're already here.
Yeah, you know, whenever it comes down to recruiting those students, is that you see a lot of employers are putting a lot of focus on community building. You know, a community and your locale around the employment opportunity is very, very important to a person that's looking for any type of position, whether or not it's entry level, mid level, or executive level. People want to know they can have a life. People want to know that they can have arts and entertainment. They want to know that there are restaurant choices. And so you start seeing how not only is that employment choice just about the employment opportunity and the employer, it's about everything that encompasses the lifestyle. And so this generation is looking for lifestyle, and that's what's leading that cause of thinking about remote opportunities, you know, paid time off and how flexible that is. Work-life balance is really driving a lot of factors. And so looking at the community holistically, looking at the employment opportunity holistically is really the whole review that people are making whenever they're accepting a position.
Okay, this makes me ask this. So does this put more power in the hands of the employees than they used to have? Because if there's a job opportunity, it's like, yeah, I would like to do this, but I really want this. And if they really want that person, I mean, is there more, they have more pull than they used to, maybe? Used to before, it's like, here's your job description, you do this, that's it.
Yeah. Right now, I think employees have an unprecedented level of power because there are so many options out there for people that the employee is currently in the driver's seat because the employer oftentimes is in need of the employee, but the employee has lots of options right now.
And so, is every employer handling that well and really realizing that that's the way it is now?
So I think a lot of employers, as you have conversation with them, are starting to recognize that they've got to make some new changes, some new strategies for what they're doing, and recognizing that competition and really that competition is no longer just regional. Right. It's not a business here in Cape competing against a business here in Cape. We're competing for employees from, you know, probably up to 90 minutes away that are coming into the community, especially when you talk about some of the upper level, real skilled, real trained jobs. So if you think about our hospitals, two of our largest employers throughout Southeast Missouri, they're bringing in workforce from multi-states on a daily or weekly basis. Both those are strategies within healthcare, but more importantly, it's just opportunities, and they've figured out how to create flexibility, scheduling patterns so that they knew they could broaden the base of potential audience to come and fill those needs in their workforce. They may be the innovators and the leaders for rural communities, and we should be looking to strategies like that. And what's that new? What's that expectation? Is it 4 10-hour workdays a week? Is it, you know, a huge conversation in the last 6 months has been just 4-day work weeks in general. Right. Maybe it's no longer even 40 hours a week if you can get a more productive 32 hours a week out of your employees, and that gets them loyalty. Businesses may have to start exploring those ideas as well.
All options are on the table. That's the thing. All options are on the table. People are reviewing all factors and segments of the employment world. Every candidate is reviewing all factors and segments of the opportunities that are presented to them. And so local area employers just need to be thinking creatively. people just need to think creatively about how they recruit and how they retain. There are incredible employers in Southeast Missouri. There are incredible candidates in Southeast Missouri. And by far, we talk about all of these different things, but there are still a lot of people looking for those classic jobs here locally that they can go to. But the employer always needs to be on their toes, and they always need to really think about what is the next thing that they could do. Is there another benefit that they could offer? It just keeps the employer on top of the trends because they know that there's always going to be changes in the workforce facilitated by, you know, a lack of applicants, or I guess a low birth rates post-millennium. And so we're going to be dealing with this issue of workforce for a while. And so we'll need to really start being creative.
All right, we got about 2 minutes. So before we go, workforce development, Southeast Missouri, what are we doing well?
We're doing really well at training. We have incredible training opportunities that are available in Southeast Missouri with all the way from high schools, CTCs, community colleges to universities. The one thing that we do need to work on as a region is just continuous communication between agencies and organizations, and then that continued push to recruit for the region. You know, we are a region and people will travel for a good position, and so we need to rattle some cans and make noise for how good life is in Southeast Missouri.
Same question for you, Robin. I know we're a regional hub, so that plays into this too.
So working together as partners, developing strategies, utilizing the resources that are available to us are some of the things that I think we are starting to do well. I will say though that there are some things we didn't spend some time talking about tonight. We really should kind of look at is what are also the barriers that are keeping people out of workforce opportunities. And so you know, a deeper dive sometime would be, you know, how does healthcare and access to healthcare play into the ability to work? How does childcare play into the ability for families to be access to work? Transportation access is a critical piece in our community, in our region, that may keep people out of work. And access and understanding where skills development opportunities may be, just encouraging people to return to the workforce may be one of the strategies we're going to have to become more proactive about, because we can't fix birth rates 20 years later.
Right, and I guess broadband access is a big one too, because if we can't get on the internet to do that remote job, and that's something I know the state's working on, trying to work with that issue too as well.
Expand those technologies and make sure they're available and accessible.
You know, I got a call from my office not that long ago from a young lady who works a 12-hour shift, and she was looking specifically for childcare. And there are huge barriers to employment, and those are areas that can be fixed, and it can help a whole group of people enter the workforce.
Everybody has to get together on the same page, talking about it and finding solutions.
Exactly.
Well, this has been very fascinating. I appreciate you both. Rob, Dan, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for the invite.
Focus on Southeast is a collaboration of KRCU and the Department of Mass Media at Southeast Missouri State University. Just a reminder that portions of these conversations will be broadcast on KRCU Public Radio and will also be available online at krcu.org and on the station's YouTube channel. From the Rest Center for Media, I'm Dan Woods. Thanks for watching, and be sure to tune in next time when we focus on Southeast.